Eraserhead is the directorial debut of David Lynch that went from acclaimed cult status to a common knowledge masterpiece. On the surface, this film is about a man who accidentally gets a girl pregnant and has an unwanted child. It seems simple enough, but there's so many added elements in this movie to create a deeply disturbing film. I mean, just listen to the description given. Henry Spencer tries to survive his industrial environment, his angry girlfriend, and the unbearable screams of his newly born mutant child. I mean, just reading that kind of gives me chills. I thought this might be a good place to start with my masterpiece review series since I've never seen this film before and I've always wanted to. I've been meaning to get into more Lynch films since the only one I'd seen prior to this is Mulholland Drive. So I figured I'd start off with a bang by watching what I believe is hailed as his best film. I knew this was going to be a weird film, and weird it was. I had no idea how disturbing it was going to be, even though I had attempted to prep myself to be disturbed. One thing that I noticed right away was how necessary the black and white is in this movie. If this movie had color, it would not be able to capture the same vibe that it does. A Clockwork Orange is a film that, in my head, I've compared to this film, but only in the way that the movies feel. I feel like they both accomplish a similar feel, but in completely opposite ways. They both have a vaguely dystopian feel with a lot of hopelessness. A Clockwork Orange accomplishes this with lots of colors and set design that make your head spin in a way that's very beautiful but just makes you uncomfortable. Just the sight of some of the sets on A Clockwork Orange disturb me even though they're overflowing with color. Eraserhead is on the other side completely. Eraserhead is black and white and achieves nearly the same tone. I'm not saying Eraserhead is more impressive in this way, actually I think it's a lot harder to pull it off when using lots of color, but what Lynch did in this film really got to me. In the future for these classic reviews, I'll put up clips and such from the movie, but I'm hesitant to do so because of a few things. One, I want people to experience the whole film if they've not already seen it and not just clips from the video. Two, ones that I want to show are kind of disturbing and could turn some people off or get this video taken down. So for now, I'll just stick to pictures, and those of you who have seen the film can surely understand why. This film is surely not for everyone, and if you haven't seen this film and you want to, drop a like and drop out, because your interpretation of this film might be different from mine and I don't want you to hear mine before you can make your own. If you aren't interested in this movie, feel free to stick around because you might be persuaded to watch it by the things I have to say. Now, my interpretation isn't anything new or groundbreaking in any way, but I have a thought about the ending and I haven't seen it mentioned anywhere in my research, so I think some fans might find it interesting. So here we go. I see this film as basically being a documentary of the scared and paranoid subconscious of a new and unprepared father. As Henry becomes this new father to a child he doesn't want, things just get worse and worse. The lady in the radiator is the temptation of suicide, saying, "In heaven, everything is fine." Basically saying, if you kill yourself, you won't have to deal with this anymore. The man on the planet is Lynch's interpretation of a god in this film, pulling the levers of our lives. Now for the ending. Henry cuts open the bandages on the mutant child and discovers that wrapped below it are lungs and intestines. Henry begins stabbing at the thing's guts in a deeply horrifying sequence that hasn't left my head since I saw it. The mutant child gets very big and then the movie ends with Henry hugging the lady in the radiator. Needless to say, I was at a loss for words. But as strange as it is, I don't think it's that hard to draw an interpretation from. As for the stabbing of the mutant followed by it getting bigger, I see that as another parenting metaphor. I take it as though this character resents his child, as some parents do. Anytime you act out on your child, it ultimately attaches you to them more. Like say you are to hit your child, generally speaking of course, once you do it, you feel badly. This child didn't do anything wrong, you're the one at fault for having a kid you weren't ready for. Therefore, the action of hitting your child is now turned into an action that adds to the debt that you are into this child, thus making the burden that it weighs on you heavier because of the regret you have for lashing out on it. So therefore, every time you lash out on your child, the bigger a burden it becomes because of the regret you feel about it. So when Henry starts stabbing the mutant, this is like a huge lash out at the child, and then because of that, the baby gets bigger and bigger, representing the growing burden of the child now because of Henry's lash out. So now the baby mutant is huge, and we see Henry hug the lady in the radiator and the movie ends. So, as I said before, I think the lady in the radiator is the temptation of suicide, and Henry hugging her at the end is saying that he kills himself to get away from his strange fatherly responsibilities. Again, this is just my interpretation. If you don't agree or feel differently, that's just fine. I just wanted to share mine. Overall, Eraserhead is a very strange movie, although I did enjoy it quite a bit once I was able to sit on it. Watching it for the first time, I was a little bit annoyed, thinking it was a little Lynchian for my taste, but after thinking about it for a while, I realized that there is method to his madness, and I was able to be a fan of the film, and I would recommend it to anybody who's interested. Seeing that this is the first installment of my classic review series, I'm still developing it to make it more interesting. I'm not sure if I want to give it a score or not right now, because with this film I'm feeling a 7 out of 10, but only because of how strange this movie is, and I know that with a few rewatches this could be bumped even higher. This is similar to another movie I watched for the first time a few months ago called Synecdoche, New York. I initially gave it an 8, but after all the research I've done to figure out everything that the film was going for, it could easily be bumped to a 10 on my next watch. So in the future for these reviews, I might do movies I'm more familiar with, but I thought doing a movie I'd only seen once was pretty fitting for the first episode of this series. Well, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment below if there's any movies you would like me to review or any other kinds of videos you'd like to see. I think that's it. Thanks again. See ya.